Hey there, everybody, and welcome back. Today, we're doing something a little different. Me and a patron named Hoku are going to be going through the first 13 episodes of Swamp Thing and just talking about them and, getting our viewpoints on the different issues and storylines, and we just thought that would be fun. And me and Hoku actually did this for Hellblazer podcast that I do, which is called John Constantine, a Hellblazer podcast. So go check that out if you have any interest in that character. But she does an introduction in that. We kind of go through a little bit more of her comic book history at the beginning. But for this one, we'll just say she's a fan of the show. We started talking about doing this, and that's why she wanted to, record these episodes with me where we talk about stuff. So with that being said, Hoku, what was your introduction to Swamp Thing? Like, was it this podcast, or did you know about the character before?
Well, unlike John Constantine, I didn't come across him randomly. I can't recall if he had a cameo in like Sandman or anything like that, anything that I was reading. So just off the top of my head, I'm not sure if he was actually in an issue or not. So beyond that, I don't think I really delved that deep into DC lore beyond, the big three and the rest of the Justice League. So no, I didn't really know about him much as a comic book fan. And it wasn't really until I think I started listening to the podcast that actually, you know what? I do recall that I did see the movie in the 80s.
Oh, wow.
Knew nothing about what it was. It was just like, swamp creature and lady shenanigans, I was still pretty young at the time. So beyond that, I didn't recognize him as, hey, this is Swamp Thing. And then, X amount of years later, Swamp Thing is a comic book character. No idea. Absolutely no idea. So beyond that initial just sort of flash of swamp monster shenanigans with a lady. Did not know who he was or anything until the podcast kind of came along and said, hey, here's some stuff you may not know about the comics you like, including this character Swamp Thing. I was like, oh, that's cool. I know nothing about Swamp Thing, but he sounds like an interesting character. So
awesome. Yeah. Well, most people know, if they, at least if they're somewhat into comics, specifically like the Vertigo stuff, they've heard of the Alan Moore run, but they don't necessarily, they haven't read it yet, or they just heard good things about it. But now that's all in print, which is nice. It's been in print recently over the last couple of years, so pretty regularly. But this Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson stuff from Volume 1, this original 13 issues, it's now back in print too, like more often, I guess, because the character from that Alan Moore run got kind of a boost. And so with that being said, the first issue of this, or the first episode of the podcast, and the first appearance of Swamp Thing is House of Secrets 92. And what did you think of that issue just by itself? It's only 8 pages. It's a quick read. What did you think of it?
As a standalone, knowing, like, if you're just going into it and being like, what is this story about? It's intriguing, monster. And then you have these two characters who supposed to be, I guess, in love, but then you find out it's like, oh no, he was his friend, and then he killed him and married his wife because he was always jealous, and then for some reason is like, she'll never forget him, I should kill her. And then Swamp Thing intervenes, kills him, and then wanders off again, is like, I'm sad, swamp monster. But then you find out, it was actually him the whole time. Her formerly murdered husband came back as a swamp monster, and then it's like the end. It raises so many questions of like how, and like where did he come from? Like where exactly? Like did he produce this swamp form? How did all this happen? Like you kind of want to know more about the character and the backstory and everything, but it's just such a short, condensed, like individual tale. And then I think I recall in the podcast, you said it was part of a compilation, like there were other stories.
Yes, there's like, I think 2 or 3 other 8-page stories in that issue. Not of Swamp Thing.
Oh, right. I don't know what the other stories are about, but I would imagine like reading through and this, story coming up being like, wow, this is really intriguing. You give me like this amazing story, but there's nothing else. Like where else can I go to get more? And I'm assuming that's the thought of why they're like, hey, we should take this character and make him into like a series regular, give him his own story. I'm assuming. Is that what happened?
Yeah, from what I understand, that they got good response from readers, like letters or something saying, we want more of this character. And also, like, this is the time when the Comics Code Authority was in place, like in the late 50s, early 60s. And so comics had kind of been watered down and been very childish for the last 15 years. And then in the mid 70s, when they did like a revisation of the Comics Code, so they allowed horror back in to the books. So this, like, he kills a guy in this, like
yeah. Like with his bare hands, just chokes the life out of him.
So I think the children that read this were like, "Oh, that's badass!" Like they had been starved for like kind of more not adult, but like more serious content.
Right.
I wouldn't
Before
say it's
the
terrifying.
Pows and the Zaps and the Bangs and the G Willikers and
yes, exactly. So I think that's also why people are like, "Wait, this is different." And then also, I mean, the Bernie Wrightson art in that first issue is so good, in that first 8-page story arc.
It's very striking.
And then, so we get that awesome story. Then there was like a year, in between, because obviously they got letters. Back then you had to write letters, then people read it. And then, that was like 3-month process right there. And then, then they respond to that, and that's another 3 months. So by the time they ended up putting out and deciding to do an actual Swamp Thing series, it was like a year later. And then we get issue 1. So issue 1 of Swamp Thing, volume 1, is interesting because, I mean, you would think they just go straight off the original, 8-page story from House of Secrets, but they don't. They have a new character, a new origin, all this stuff, a more science-y origin, less possible supernatural than was in the House of Secrets. And the House of Secrets, like, one seemed to take place in the, early 1900s or something like it, or Victorian era.
Yeah, it seemed a bit older because the artwork and even just the way she was dressed and the way he, I forget the husband's name.
They were wearing suits in their house.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And the house itself was very like almost Victorian. So not that it wouldn't be today, but it just seemed like of the era of like when you would be watching Dracula or something,
Right. Yeah. And that's probably what they were going for, like gothic horror. And that also might be why it struck a note, like it seemed to fit that horror. But for this series launch, they decided to update it to present day, which was the 1974, I think. And then they changed the backstory of how he became Swamp Thing. So what did you think of that? Did you think that was weird or needed, or did you want them to continue with the original one that you read?
Well, being able to read them like one after the other, I think it's maybe not as jarring, because if you had given, in the old days, you can imagine like they get those big bags of letters, like they're going to Santa and they have to go through each letter individually. And like you said, it's a time consuming process to be like, hey, enough people have asked for this. Let's make another one. And then whatever process they made to completely change everything, maybe they thought people wouldn't really notice that it was like a completely different origin. They would maybe just vaguely remember, oh yeah, wasn't there a swamp monster and like he killed the guy and then, he wandered off again. So maybe they wouldn't remember specifics from how he was birthed as Swamp Thing and the story. They would just be like, oh yeah, there was this sort of swamp monster tale. And so them sort of retelling the origin, refreshing everyone's memory, they could possibly be like, oh yeah, maybe that must have been what happened. Vaguely remember the swamp monster and him fighting somebody. So
right. Yeah. That's a good point. I always forget that, like, oh yeah, these things didn't they couldn't just be read on demand like they do now. So someone read that a year ago, they might not even remember, or they go like, wasn't there a similar swamp story in the other one? And then they go, oh, I guess this must be like the new book or whatever. Like they don't remember all the details.
So whether or not it was him being like, hey, I have a story I want to tell that is it kind of touches on this, but I kind of want to do my own version of it. And they were like, sure, yeah, do whatever you want. Or, however that process went for the reason behind the change. I feel like they must have thought the fans wouldn't be sticklers like they are today, where we can be like, no, that's not the way it went, and I can go back and look at it and, angrily send a text or, a tweet or something.
Email them, tweet them, yeah.
Instantly and be like, hey, I know this issue just like dropped 5 seconds ago, but this is already wrong. And so I feel like back then it wouldn't have really mattered. They would have just been like, oh, cool, more of the swamp monster. Yes, like devour it, every issue that comes out.
Right, yeah. And one difference between the two that I noticed is, so the one from House of Secrets, the Swamp Thing, and that, he is much more like mossy and like, covered with greenery.
Kind of has a mustache too, right? Like the weird long filigree sort of like mustachy thing on his face.
It's because he's got that like nose bridge. It's the same nose bridge as the one from the later series, but but I think because he's more mossy, like the plant life is growing more. It just looks like a mustache, I think.
Oh, okay. It just, I think maybe when they redesigned him to be more humanoid, they kind of, curved that up a little more. So it's just his mouth and not like trailing down his body too. So he doesn't necessarily look like a guy in a bush costume. He actually looks like a dude who is a plant monster with like muscles and stuff.
Yeah, they definitely made him more like buff and muscular and everything. So they gave him those root veins that make him look like super buff. Yeah, but
maybe like they wanted to sort of distinguish him from Sasquatch, because he did kind of look Sasquatchy in the first version.
That's true. Yeah, if you had made him like white, he would have been like or brown. He could have been like a Sasquatch.
Yeah,
or
like the swamp ape or whatever they have down in Florida or something. It's supposed to be like a mossy ape creature or something. So got those kind of feels.
Yeah, for sure. So the one interesting thing about the series in the 70s, the volume 1 series, is that it's got 7 issues that start off with, each of them feel like a standalone story, but then you get in the background this conclave story that does go somewhere, and it actually ends in issue 7 when he gets to Gotham. So how did you like that, the way that flowed? Like, these are all like werewolf or, monster of the week, but then in the background, there is like this overarching big bad guy in the background.
It was a really interesting way to do both a monster of a week and a continuing plot line, like throughout, because they gave you both. They gave you both, like, here's something immediate that you need to deal with, but here's something in the background you should be thinking about and worrying about at the same time. So if someone just picked up one issue and was like, cool, it's a werewolf, awesome, and didn't pick up anything else, they would still get that individual story of like, you get that sale of someone who just like, it's got a werewolf on it, I'm interested in that and nothing else. But if it was enough to intrigue them and be like, wait, why does that dog have a transmitter in its brain? Or, what is that thing in the shadows at the end of every issue? Hopefully that's probably what they were hoping would drive the sales. And they probably needed those initial sales for at least those first 7 issues. If it was strong enough, they could keep going, So I that was a brilliant move to do both an immediate, like, interesting thing happening in every issue, but with that background thing, it hopefully encouraged a lot of readers to be like, oh no, there's something else that, it's not just, the thing in the tunnel. It's also these guys in the background.
Yeah. And with that, like, did you have a favorite of those monster issues? Like, any ones that stood out?
Oh, definitely the weird monster in the tunnel.
Yeah, the lurker in tunnel 25 or whatever it's called, or 19.
Yeah, I forget its name.
Mingala. Or yeah, that's what it Mig. I don't know. I can't remember what it is right now, but yeah, it's something like there's an M and an apostrophe and an N.
Blobby thing in the tunnel.
Yeah, exactly. I also like that one a lot, and that one's interesting because it's after right after the Gotham storyline. So like, the conclave ends, and then we get this weird, space alien monster that's from the caves,
Which is such a cool move to go from like Gotham and Batman to, space monster, sort of like a almost Cthulhu-esque creature, after having dealt with the sort of realism of a real city and Batman, to immediately jump into, space, essentially like outer space eldritch horror on Earth. Such a cool twist.
Yeah, I love that issue, actually. That's one of my favorites, like, of this early series.
Yeah, definitely one of my favorites of the run, being a super big horror fan.
Speaking of Batman, what did you think about his appearance in issue 7? Like, It's a little bit different than he's written nowadays, and probably more of the stuff you've read. So what'd you think?
I thought it was funny. I kind of forgot how different Batman was back then. He was a bit, I don't know, I don't want to say campy because he's not like super campy, like 60s campy, but it's not quite like super dark.
There's no edge to him.
Yeah, he's not quite the Miller Batman or
Yeah,
anything.
no, he's like a stick in the mud kind of detective or whatever. That's how I see him in this. He's very like, he's like a dad who's a detective who dresses like a bat, like, and then the way that like him and Swamp Thing are on the same trail, but it's just funny how they run into each other.
Have a little tussle.
Yeah, I love that fight scene because, especially if you think later on in the Alan Moore run, which we have got to yet, but we will get to. But yeah, they meet again and it's freaking awesome. So, that's one of my favorite issues just because of that. All those early Batman like versus someone issues is fun. There's a Dead Man issue from the 70s that has
No way.
Yeah, it has so Dead Man's power is he can possess someone. So he's like a dead guy that can possess someone's body. He possesses Batman's body, proceeds to get Batman beat the hell out of him. Like he tries to fight a bunch of guys and then he loses horribly. And then he leaves Batman's body and is like, sorry, like my bad. I didn't realize I couldn't fight.
Gosh.
Yeah.
Probably should have let you handle that.
Yeah, and that's like one of my favorite ones, and that's a close second to this one, I think, just because they're both funny uses of Batman in a comic. Yeah, I also like that Bruce Wayne is in the comic too. Like
that was actually pretty funny too, because you rarely see, except in say like the animated show. I don't recall seeing much of Bruce in the comics. It was usually 90% Batman. Very rarely did they actually touch on his his day persona or his dating life or his goings on business that actually supposed to be doing stuff at Wayne Enterprises or any of that, which he kind of did a little bit of that.
Yeah, and the funny thing is like Bruce, he's playing. Usually when they have Bruce, that's the facade, right? Like Bruce is the facade, Batman's the real Bruce, but in this, it seemed like they were literally two separate people where Bruce was not picking up on any of the signs that whatever his name is, Mr. E was actually the Conclave leader. And he's been looking for the Conclave forever and like all this stuff. So it's like, he's right in your boardroom, dude. Like you put your Batman hat on for a second. See past it.
I thought you were the world's greatest detective. You don't get anything from him at all.
He was a little slower in the 70s before Neil Adams took over. And
he was probably a lot more optimistic.
Yes, probably that too. He hadn't seen the horrors of the world yet,
No, he wasn't quite like he didn't go down to the deepest, darkest depths quite yet.
So one thing that happens is after issue 10, well, I don't know if I said this, but we're going to cover issues 1 through 13 today because that is the first total or complete run that's of an author in the series, which is Len Wein's run. He ends with issue 13 writing, but Bernie Wrightson, the artist, ends at issue 10. And I was wondering what you thought of that. Like, did you notice a jarring change in the art past issue 10?
Not really. I mean, I probably wouldn't have noticed if you hadn't mentioned it, just because the styles are similar. Obviously, not perfectly the same, but I think he did a good enough job, like mimicking the previous art style to keep going, especially if these are coming out like month to month, right? They're originally like month to month. I doubt anyone would be like, wait, this doesn't look exactly the same way that I remember the issue being, because I think they got an artist that was close enough. Like it wasn't a super jarring change. It wasn't suddenly someone was drawing in a more like, blocky or eccentric way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It fit it.
Yeah. So it was in the same vein, I think, of the standard 70s style. And I don't know if he then, goes on to sort of shift later on, because the artist continues, right? Even though Len Wein.
Yeah. Nestor Redondo draws, I want to say he draws from issue 11 to either the last issue or like maybe like issue 22 or 23. 24 is the last issue of volume 1. So
Oh, okay.
so yeah, we already got like halfway through this one volume. So so it didn't last too long. It only lasted like 2 years. So
Oh, okay. Yeah. So like maybe as time goes on, he might, instead of mimicking, he might try to like skew it a little bit into his own personal style to give it his own personal flair and then sort of separate it himself. But I can imagine that with the art change so suddenly, essentially suddenly, that he would want to transition slowly so that it wasn't so jarring for the reader and they would just assume, hey, everything's the same, easygoing, no waves. You don't want to just jump in and suddenly be a completely different person. I'm assuming back then they wanted it to be as, cohesive as possible.
yeah, that's a lot of the studios had like a house style. So like you would have a guide if you were an artist that would say like draw like this. and that really it didn't limit an artist necessarily, because you get artists like Neil Adams or Bernie Wrightson that are good enough that they follow those standards, but their style shows through. And then there are artists who just adhere to those standards like strictly. And I wouldn't say Nestor Redondo does that, but he definitely you could tell he's probably trying to channel his inner Bernie Wrightson and hit some of the same stuff so that people aren't jarred by it. Because like you said, obviously they want people to not be like, what the hell is this when they pick it up? So, but like, yeah, I think eventually he does kind of let it flow a little bit more with his style, or his influence in it. But these first couple issues, like 11 through 13, you could definitely tell he's sticking pretty close to Bernie Wrightson.
Which was a good choice because they probably wanted it to. I mean, I don't know why the first artist would have left. I have no idea. Maybe it was a scheduling thing.
So he's a British artist who takes a long time. And so because his art is so detailed. So I think he had a good catch up point. Like I think he started really early on this because he knew it was going to be a thing. So that he probably had 1 through 10 almost already done by the time they started putting him out. And then it caught up to him and he's like, oh shit, like I'm behind now. And then probably also he was more expensive than Nestor because at this time, all the companies started going to the Philippines to get artists. So Nestor Redondo is like an early Filipino artist that they hired. And so basically because it's obviously cheaper to hire them because their wages aren't as high as like a British guy or whatever, because in the Philippines the standard of living is lower, right? So they're like, we can pay them much less to do this, then why are you paying this British guy? It's close enough. And so so I think that was a little bit, I'm not going to be that cynical and say it was only that, but I think Bernie Wrightson is known for taking his time.
It was a contributing factor, most likely.
I'm sure. And also, like, maybe if it was selling amazingly, like if it was blowing everything out of the water, but if it was just selling,
it would have been worth it to keep that investment going.
Yes. And I think also at this time, I don't know if Bernie Wrightson is Bernie Wrightson yet. People now are like, ooh, I know who that is. He's amazing. But back then it might have just been like, oh, he's a jobber comic book artist. So, who's got really good talent, and they could tell that, but he's not necessarily like a name, So,
right.
So yeah, that's one of the interesting things I thought about this was just the artist change right in the middle of Len Wein and Bernie Wrightson's arc or story series is like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But it makes sense somewhat if you kind of know some of those factors.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, and I actually like Nestor Redondo a lot. Like he's one of my favorite 70s artists.
Nice.
And a lot of those Filipino artists are. And that was like the first wave of Filipino artists, because in the 90s they came back with more. Probably like the kids who saw those Filipinos were like, oh, I can do that too. And then so there was another wave, and that's how we get like Will Sportasio, who made like he came up with Bishop for the X-Men. He's like
cool.
A really, really big image artist. And he did a bunch of work on the X-Men with Jim Lee, and they were like best friends. So like, yeah, there's a lot of history involved in that So, if DC and Marvel had never gone to to the Philippines, we might not have got Bishop, That's that's kind of important.
So it all works out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Bernie Wrightson wasn't struggling. He was fine. He got other work.
I'm sure he was like, okay, so I don't have to put, that's not on my plate anymore. I could probably focus on things closer to home, because I'm sure it was also like mailing pages, right?
Yes, all of it's mailing.
So mailing pages it probably saved him a lot of time too.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, he was busy. I think at this time he was writing, or he was working on an illustrated Frankenstein book that's amazing.
Oh,
his Frankenstein. I mean, if from issue 3 of the Patchwork Man, you definitely know that he can draw a good Frankenstein. So and imagine this, but like with the time he wants to put into like a full illustrated book. So he gets super detailed. It's amazing. It's amazing. But yeah, and one thing I wanted to touch on is so in this early series, we get like a lot of key Swamp Thing things that happen, like key characters. We get the introduction of Anton Arcane in issue 2. We get the introduction of Abby Arcane in issue 2. And the idea is, there's also an idea that like Swamp Thing can regrow himself. It just has to be in the swamp, which I was like, wow, he's so close to Alan Moore right there, but he doesn't take that extra little baby step and be like, well, yeah, he's a plant. He can grow anywhere.
Or losing his arm and growing back.
Yeah. Like little things like that happen. And it's like, oh, you're so close, but then he never goes there. And probably, he stops writing it after issue 13. So maybe that's why too. But yeah, like, what'd you think of the introduction of Abby? Also, I mean, I know she's from Eastern Europe, but I don't give Abby an Eastern European accent.
Yeah.
Or Anton Arcane. So I don't know. I mean, I try not to do too much accents just because I don't want to offend anybody.
I think it's fair for you not to force yourself to come up with an accent that you would then have to maintain for a very long time.
Yes. Yeah. I was like, same with John Constantine Hellblazer. I'm like, well, he's British, and I tell everybody, just so you know, he's British, but I am not going to do a whatever accent. Because also, like, in England, it's very, like, they're like, oh, you're from 5 miles away because your accent, I can tell. It's like a totally different accent. I have no idea what it is. It's, it's Liverpool or London, and I'm like, I don't know what that accent.
Oh, yeah, the specifics can get down to almost the street you grew up on.
Yeah, and that's crazy. Like, to me, as like an American, crazy. I'm like, that's insane. Like, we have states and state accents, and other than that, like, I can't tell your street, from where you were born, so
it's crazy.
So, but what did you think about like the introduction? Like, Anton Arcane becomes the big bad throughout most of Alan Moore's run, all of Nancy Collins's run as well, I think, is based around him. And he shows up through just a lot of the series. And so, like, as him being just like an old man who's like, I want your body. Do you think that's like a good enough start, or would you wanted to see something bigger?
I think it was intriguing that this is sort of a soft start of just being like, I'm an eccentric old man and I want to be young and strong again, but not specifically a young man. I want your monster body so I can terrorize people and like subjugate them. I thought that was a very interesting twist on the whole immortality idea. And the fact that it does, for a brief moment, like, it happens, it switches, and he is Swamp Thing and Alex a human again, which is like, you're like, oh, wait, this is how the series is going to end. We're going to follow him as Swamp Thing now, as you can imagine it being the second issue, right? And all of a sudden, Swamp Thing's not Swamp Thing anymore. He's a human. So for those few pages, I'm sure people were like, wait, I thought now he's Swamp Thing. Is he going to be Swamp Thing forever? But then obviously they solve it in that issue and they swap back and everything's, horrible for Alec again. But he's like, but I saved the town and I'm okay with that. And so I thought it was a really awesome twist to throw in there, like right away, where you're like, he's cured, he's human, he can go back to living a normal life. Oh, no, wait, no, he's still got a moral compass. He's got to save people. He's got to keep this guy from, taking over the world and take that burden back. And it gives like a really great intro to a crazy character, a crazy old man, but also shows you just how selfless Alec is, just how much of a hero he is, and he's taking this burden. He's a different, like, very mopey character otherwise.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Like, what do you think about Swamp Thing in this first run at least, is very like, I'm sad all the time.
Yeah, so sad. I'm sad, and all my thoughts are sad. And every time I look at anything, all I can think of is Linda, and she's dead, and I'm sad, and I wish I was human again. I could have been, but I chose not to be. So I'm so super, super sad. Just that consistent feeling of sadness that's just, oh man, it's depressing, but also you get it. Like, he has every reason to be sad.
Yeah, and like also, I mean, that feeling of like sadness is throughout the book for the most part. Like, I feel even in volume 2, there's a lot of, that's like an underlying current of, even when he comes to terms with he's not a monster and maybe there is no cure for him later on. It's like, okay, like, even though he's not sad, at least at this moment, sadness is always in the background in his life, or it seems like there's always going to be sadness.
Right. He's just a tragic character. He's like Batman. They're just molded to be these tragic figures that are, even if they have moments of happiness, they're still overall surrounded by just sadness and despair because of their life, because they wouldn't be who they are today if the horrible things had not happened to them before. So it's just one of those inevitable, like, yeah, it's a really shitty life.
So would you keep reading this story once the original team ended? Like, if you just picked it up and read it, do you think you would continue on? Like, if you just found the 13 issues and you read them, would you be like, oh, I definitely want to continue with this character because the character is so engrossing? Or do you think like, I don't know, I'll read it later if someone says it's good,
I would probably continue on just to find out what happens next, because he just sort of like wanders off and is like, I'm so sad. I can't bring them into my sadness. I should be alone with my sadness.
I love that. Every time he's like, I've got friends now. Like, Matt Cable understands. He's like, you know what? No, I must be sad. I will walk away into the mist. Like, he'll
just end up getting hurt if he's with me. I must be alone.
Oh, one thing that's also interesting is like, so Abby Arcane's introduced. We get a lot of her backstory from issue 3, where we find out, her dad was killed and then turned into like this Frankenstein monster. But one thing that's interesting is later on, Abby Arcane and Matt Cable are like married. But like in this, there is like zero romantic interest, I found. Like, while reading it this time, I was like, I don't see any like interest on either of their parts romantically for each other. Did you feel anything?
I feel like there was a smidge of sort of like interest from Abby to Matt. I mean, she followed him to the States.
That's true.
She did just kind of like leave her life behind. I mean, technically she had nowhere to go. Her castle was destroyed, and I doubt she wanted to stay in the town anymore. But she kind of just emigrated.
Yeah, her uncle did want to kill everybody.
Yeah, like they probably wouldn't like want to associate with her anymore. So she probably had nowhere to go. But still, she followed essentially a stranger that she happened to run into to the States and stayed with him the whole time. Not like, well, it's been fun. You go chase your swamp monster. I'm going to go live my own life and, figure out what I'm going to do with myself because I have like training to do other things. But no, she sticks with him through all the craziness, like constantly. Has his back, even when times he's like, I don't know what I'm doing. And she's like, no, you're doing the right thing because you feel it's right. And
That's true. Like, she definitely gives him the support of a spouse or something.
Right. She has his back as a supporting character. But to me, it seems a little bit like she kind of got attached to him and wanted to see things through with him. Whether they meant for them to get together or not in these first 13 issues, I didn't feel that necessarily, but I did feel her sort of like, not necessarily clinginess to him, but willing to go on this journey with him, like learn about him and just to see where things would go between them. I don't know if he felt the same way with her. It does seem kind of weird that he never is like, so what would you like to do with your life now that you're here? He's always just like, Swamp Thing. And she's like, yes, let's do that. You know?
Yeah, she like trauma bonds to whatever he's, his mission, which is getting Swamp Thing at the time.
Yeah. I mean, she's been through some crazy shit with, and he happened to be there too. So it just seemed like, yeah, that sort of connection over craziness and not really knowing what else to do beyond that.
Right. Yeah. So speaking of like this storyline, so this run I think is mostly noted for the art. Do you think, like, what do you think of Len Wein's storytelling? Like, he's written a lot of stuff. He's been around for a long time writing a lot of stuff. So, but this is just one of his creations in DC Comics. And, when the people are writing this, it's a paycheck, right? Like, it is Monster of the Week. I'm just coming up with a little story. Yeah, we're going to get this great illustrator, but he's also doing it for a paycheck. And then, hopefully kids like it. That's kind of what their viewpoint was, at least as I understand it. So, that being said, what did you think of the storytelling? Did you like the way, like, certain things I'm thinking of are, like the dog, right? The dog is introduced in issue 1, and it's simply there to, like, one, be a companion to Swamp Thing so he can pet it and talk to it. And then also it keeps the villains in Swamp Thing's story as he travels the world, because they can listen to the radio transmitter through the dog or whatever. So it's like, it's only there to be a foil for Swamp Thing, but also be a companion for him. And then to be the point where he gets so angry because the bad guy kills the dog, right? In issue 7. So it's like, it's only there. Like, that's one of those things. It's kind of like, it's the MacGuffin dog, where it's just there for that one thing.
Right. It's a what do you call it? Plot point that just, they needed a way to follow Swamp Thing without, like, being obvious that they were following him, and for some reason he bonded with the dog. So like, sweet, now we'll know what the Swamp Thing's doing every single time, or Matt. I think it swaps. Sometimes it's with Swamp Thing, and then, but originally it was with Matt, right?
Yeah, it's both, because Matt will take it to Europe, to follow Swamp Thing, and then when they come back, it like an explosion will happen, and then the dog won't be on the page for, or it won't be in the comic for pages. And then all of a sudden, when they need it to come, it's like, arf, arf, arf. And they're like, oh, good boy. You survived the explosion. Like, good thing we kept you around. So, yeah. And that's like, he's like the MacGuffin whenever you need the bad guy to know some information, the dog was there. When he doesn't need to know, the dog wasn't there.
Yeah. Very useful tool.
Yeah. So I thought that was interesting. There was just things like that, like crutches like that, or even like continuity errors. There was one in, I think it was issue 10.
It was, I think, the laboratory when the castle supposedly blew up, but then the Patchwork Man goes to the laboratory and is like, he blew the things up. But then when Arcane came back, he went to that same laboratory and everything was fine. It wasn't blown up or on fire. So you know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking he had a secret second laboratory, like Contact, where they build the second machine and no one knew about it. He must have had a secret.
He had a backup lab.
Yeah, he had a backup lab with, I'm assuming, equal amounts of the same stuff, if not like the excess stuff. Maybe he's like, oh, this lab's full. I'm going to make a backup lab with like all my extra stuff. And then that's where he did his stuff. Because yeah, otherwise it's like they just assumed that somehow he got rebuilt in the time it took the Patchwork Man to get there as well, but then accidentally blow it up. So somehow he, his unmen carried him there, put him in a new body, and they left before the Patchwork Man ever showed up.
Yeah, there were things like that. And that's one of the things I'm like, Len Wein could have said one line where he said, my backup lab, or whatever. Yeah. Like, luckily I had this second lab. And that's all you needed to explain it.
That no one else knew about.
Yeah. Or like, this is the one in the dungeon or something, like where I used to do my experiments. This is my old lab. My new lab was upstairs and got blown up. So yeah, like when he rebuilds his body, or when the Unmen rebuild his body for him, that's where Arcane really takes off as a villain. When he comes back in issue 10 and he is gigantic and muscular and he can fight. He's not an old man who knows a little magic now. It's like, oh no, he's like a threat. And that's where he actually becomes like the Arcane we know in issue 10.
Well, I think just the fact that he comes back at all, because he starts off sort of the like monster of the week monsters, and every other monster dies. The werewolf dies. The alien.
Everybody except the witch. The witch kills everybody.
That's true. They didn't die, but they just kind of disappear. So we assume they just went off to.
They murdered all the men in the town.
Yeah, and then there was the clockwork people. They all died.
Oh yeah, that one's messed up. I always thought that one was super messed up.
I just can't believe that he was able to perfectly mimic people he's never met and read a short obituary about, and was somehow to give them like full personalities and feelings.
For me, I always read that issue as like it's not actually the personalities of those people. He literally got the information of like Alec and Linda died. So he knows that they're married, and then he just puts in like whatever love code, right? Like, cause they talked about each other pretty generically. They were just like, I love you. Like they were very robotic in that way.
Oh, it's a lovely night.
Yes. I didn't feel like it was actually like their personalities are supposed to be.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. At least that's how I read it.
I was reading it as like, how did he know these people? I mean, I was probably reading too much into it, because I assumed that just because they were being such a lovely, loving couple, like when we're first introduced and they're sitting together and it's like, oh, I love you, Linda. Oh, I love you, Alec. And then later on, of course, they're like, I love you. I love you. I guess I just kind of assumed that somehow he gave them more personality to that, because they seem to play together really well. And so then I assumed, oh, he must somehow figure out how to give all of his people more personality. And so that was mind-boggling to me. It's like, how does he know who they were?
Right, yeah. That's a good point. Like, I don't know, how I read it was like, oh, he put like a basic love code in them, right? Like, and told them you are married. So they were acting like they would if they were married, but not like they didn't know like, oh, the buyer was sort of formed. They didn't know any of the stuff that they would have known if they were actually them, So
no, that makes more sense. I think I was probably just getting a little too in depth and like, no, this is just a 70s quick story. Don't be overthinking things. So I was probably just going a little too deep into the psychology of that issue.
Yeah, so like with Len Wein's storytelling, did you like his storytelling? Did you like the way it flowed, or would you change anything about it, or did you not like certain things?
I thought it was really fun to read the sort of episodic monster of the week with a slight undertone behind it with the conclave. It felt very refreshing, because I'm more used to the long running issues that they mostly did for like 90s 2000, like even now, like it's all about like the arc. You got to get the whole arc in.
Yeah, it's all about 6-issue arc is what it is. Yeah
So it's 6, 8, 12, however many issues they do, it's all about the arc. And if you don't know anything when you jump into issue 3, you're screwed. Because they very rarely do like catch ups or pick me ups or, hey, by the way, this happened before. It's like, no, you got to know everything you need to know going into this. So it was very refreshing. And I suppose most people would consider it just like old school and like, oh, it's just so old. But I liked the idea that you could pick up any issue and get a story, like a full complete story, but also have that little tidbit of, oh, but there's actually something else going on in the background if you want to keep reading. And then, as you went on, every once in a while, they'd be like, oh, by the way, and then when this happened, and give you a quick throwback to, by the way, you should pick up issue 1 or issue 2 when this happened. Like when Arcane came back and they were like, yeah, you remember when he met him back in issue 2? You should go read that and find out how that went.
With his storytelling, I think this is some of the better stuff I've read from the 70s, just personally. Because sometimes it is very much like, wow, I don't care about this at all, or you could tell the writer doesn't care about it. I feel like Len Wein cared about the character, at least enough to put some effort into that background story, and then come up with cool versions of the monsters of the week. So like we said, you have the witch who's like a brother and sister. And actually the twist is it's the brother who's the witch, not her, and she's a conduit. And yeah, it's like stuff like that. I feel like he was trying.
Because that could have been just a regular, like, oh, she's actually a witch and she's evil. It's like, no, her innocent, slightly slow brother is in fact the center of power, and he flows, he uses her as a conduit to do his magic because he doesn't know how to do that. He just is like, bad people, and she's like, flowers.
Yeah, let me murder them for you. Yeah. So yeah, I liked it a lot. I for the 70s or for this type of comic, because I always try to judge stuff like on their context. Like, so you can't judge this as like, oh, nowadays they do this. So, but in the 70s, I feel like these are some strong issues. And like you said, they're very refreshing if you go back after reading stuff from nowadays and you're like, oh, wow, like I fully get the full story this one issue, but then, yeah, I do want to find out what happens with this conclave thing in the background. So that's kind of what keeps you stringing along, continuing to buy the issues.
Even after the storyline with the conclave ended, they still kept it going because Matt's still obsessed with finding out, no longer wanting to kill Swamp Thing, but wanting to find out, like, what are you? Like, who are you? Like, what do you have? Like, what is your connection to Alec and Linda? If you didn't kill them, like, where are you from? Like, why are you always saving my life? So there was still that monster of the week feel, but that the undercurrent then became, is Matt going to figure out who Swamp Thing is? Because Swamp Thing knows who he is. He knows who Matt is, but there's no, like, that connection is not there yet. And so it comes down to, will he find out the true origins of Swamp Thing? And he will.
I like that addition, like, because it's a good, follow up to the Conclave. Because once they, kill the bad guy of the Conclave, it's like, okay, it's done. And then what's going to happen from here? So you follow Matt for a while, and then you get the Bolt storyline, which is in conflict with Matt's storyline. Because Matt's like, okay, he's good, but why? And Bolt's like, my girlfriend died because of him. So I want revenge. And so then there's like a conflict between them, and they're kind of friendly with each other. So that's an issue. Yeah. What'd you think of that introduction of these other characters? Also, that's a really weird issue, how they get introduced, where it's like, oh, there's a spaceman and he takes him into the ship.
Space worms.
Yeah, space
Giant
worms.
Elephant space worms. I mean, not space worms. Mutated worms. I'm sorry, I got that wrong. I was thinking of the space creature. But yes, giant elephant mutated worms from a plot line that comes from a different story as well, right? Because
from the Phantom Stranger, yeah.
Yeah. So
and I've never read that, so I wonder where, like, what that is, how crazy that issue is,
You kind of want to know the origin. See, it works. It works when they're like, hey, by the way, if you want to know the origin of this weird shit, you should go check out that comic. And you're like, you know what? This is so weird. I may just do that.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. It does make me want to go back and read it.
And if you read that, it'll be like, by the way, the weird stuff happening in this is actually connected to this other thing. So you got to keep digging.
You got to keep doing it. Yeah. And, like, I thought it was it was a super weird issue, but I thought it was very interesting. Like, just the flow of it. Like, I like the creature designs of the, like, weird worms, and then, like, the main bad guy, I don't remember what his name is, but the main bad guy, it's like one word. Yeah, it's like one word. I can't remember what it is.
Gideon? No. I forget.
I don't remember. But yeah, and, like, I like how that one has a twist of the worms are actually playing the main bad guy.
Yeah.
He thinks the worms are working for him. They're like,
funny.
No, you're doing your thing, and we're plotting behind you.
We're actually going to eat all the people you're trying to save.
Yes. Yeah, I love that, like, twist. It's so weird. I never knew what was going to happen when I was reading that. Like, as I turned the page, I'm like, what the fuck's going on?
I would also agree that the one thing you can say about his storytelling is you never knew what the hell was going to happen. You could turn the page and be like, I was not expecting that. It's the worms that are the bad guy this whole time. Or, yeah, just the craziest twists, which obviously he did that on purpose to keep you intrigued so that you weren't bored. I'll be like, oh, I know where this is going. Oh, no, you don't. It's going in a completely different direction. Oh, yeah. Or like the fact that when Arcane comes back and you're like, how is Swamp Thing going to get out of this one? Guess what? The dead are going to rise and save you.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of that one. So I thought, okay, that issue number 10, when Anton Arcane comes back, I mean, it has some really heavy subject matter, like slavery and, killing of slaves and stuff like that.
Brutally, too, right? Because it's visually brutal as well.
It's visually brutal. They did, it was the 70s still, so they couldn't show, like, too much. But like, you get the whole, Yeah, he was burned alive, and his arm was cut off when he was a kid, and some other slave got pulled his joints pulled out and stuff. So, I mean, it's the 70s. That could have gone horribly wrong. What did you think of how they handled those subject matters?
I think it was done surprisingly well because as you're going through it and you're like, oh, geez, where's this story going? This could go to some very, I mean, obviously goes to very dark areas, but this could go to a dark area in a very negative way. And you're like, oh, how bad is this going to be as far as the portrayal of the, slaves or how all that went. And I thought it was great. It was such a great revenge story. A little heavy-handed on the dialogue for Arcane, I would say. A little on the nose for that.
So, okay, that's my only thing is when he's like, I will make you slaves and I will enslave the,
rumble, rumble, rumble.
That shit made me laugh so hard when I was reading it.
And then the wind starts blowing.
But it makes sense though. Like if you keep saying key words, they would rise and murder you.
It works for his character. He does seem like the sort of megalomaniac who would constantly be like, and you're going to be my slave, and you're going to be my slave. So it works. It was a little on the nose, but it has a great effect and a great ending to, them just being, I mean, you don't get to see it, but you assume torn limb from limb painfully and murdered. So.
Yeah. Well, I do know that the next time you see Arcane is in volume 2 and he has a different body. So yeah, he definitely got torn up. And I think they even do a callback and show what happened in this issue, like off page, to him. Yeah. So when we get there, we'll cover that too.
Oh, fun. Yeah, that's another thing too, is that you're like, oh no, he's come back. How did he come back? And then he dies again. You're like, is this the end this time? Like, could he come back again? It definitely leaves that door open.
Right. He came back once from the dead, right? So
he came back once. So can he come back again? It's not like it's a, I am the son of Arcane and I'm here to avenge my father sort of thing. It's actually him. Like he found a way to literally come back from the dead in a new body.
Yeah, I like the explanation for that where it's like he was dead, but he wasn't. Like his spirit was still there, like holding on.
Yeah, he's so, like his zest for life is so strong. His zest to rule apparently is so strong that he just refuses to die.
And that makes him like even creepier, every time he comes back, he's got a different body and a different, way of, he's got the same motivation, but different, more menacing body and more threatening.
I am glad to hear that they're able to use his character more because, if this was actually the end, if this was like the end of Arcane's tale, it'd be kind of sad because you're like, oh, why did he come back then? Like, what was the point? So if they're able to use him again further along in the story, like you said, if he comes back again and again, that's pretty cool. That they're able to continually use him as sort of like the big bad every once in a while when they need a big bad to come around.
Yeah. And, I think it works out well. Like I said, in the future, I know he is like the big bad for a while and stuff. So that's pretty cool. But yeah, is there anything else you want to touch on these 13 issues?
I was actually curious, since I know you love the art so much, do you have a favorite cover of these 13 issues?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So let's see. I'm trying to remember all of them because I don't have them in front of me at the moment. But okay, it's like the one everybody knows is I think it's issue 9 where he's popping out of the water. And, he's all covered with, like, the water's falling off of his body. That one's pretty well known. I actually like, which ones I like? I like the one that Nestor Redondo does where he's fighting a dinosaur. I think it's issue 13 or 12. Yeah. I'm like, that's such a weird, like, you just see that cover, you're like, I have to read what this is about. Hopefully what the cover is in the story, and it is. But, like, he gets to fight a dinosaur, and that's fucking awesome.
Right off the bat, too, because it ends with him going back in time in like the end of the previous issue. So right there is like probably a bigger hook than they ever did for any of the other ones where it was like, oh, a shadow creature on the background. Or, I'd say the only thing that could probably compare would be like, oh, Linda, oh, Alec. And you're like, wait, they're dead. Are they alive? But then all of a sudden they're like, dinosaur. Find out next month. Why is he fighting a dinosaur?
How is he fighting a dinosaur? Yes.
Yeah.
So I like that cover just because it is so like, oh my God, this is going to be epic. Yeah. Speaking of that, real quick before we end this, what do you think of the treatment of animals? Like Swamp Thing later on is a bit more of a like conservationist, we'll say, or like cares more about animal life. And in this, he's like killing dinosaurs, killing alligators. He's always wrestling something in the swamp.
Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily a protector of the earth in that he more or less seemed like I'm a plant guy, but if something gets in my way, you're dead.
Yeah, I just thought that was funny, having read some of the later things and then coming back to it and be like, oh, that's what they're talking about.
He just like breaks the neck of an alligator dude, and then there was the giant snake that he's like, now you die, snake, or something.
You go squish now. Yeah.
That's what it was. Such a great line. You go squish now.
Yeah, I love it in the dinosaur one. He just breaks the dinosaur's leg, like like back then, a broken leg means you're getting eaten for sure by something else, right? So.
Oh yeah, totally. He's gonna get picked off by all the like boss raptors or something because he can't run.
Yeah, and there's no thought in his mind. He doesn't even say like, "I'm sorry, buddy." Although he does care about the dog, and the dog does have like an arc throughout the whole thing. So obviously,
that's true. He did care about the plot device dog.
And you know what? One thing I am mad about they never did for that dog is give him a name.
That's true. Nobody even called it anything, did they? Like Matt didn't even give it a name.
No, Matt was just like, good boy. Like, there you go, dog. Like his name was Dog or something. Like, it's just like, come on, you could have given him a name. He died without a name.
That's just sad.
But he was loved by Swamp Thing and Matt, so that's
good. He actually was able to have like two good masters at the end.
Yeah, it was nice. Don't say masters too much, or else they
that's true.
Might get attacked.
I forgot about that. Oh no, wait! I hear the wind blowing.
Yeah, yeah. So on that note, I guess we're gonna probably do the next one on the next 12 issues, which is. I guess not 12 issues. I guess issues 14 to 24, which is the end of volume 1, and we'll just do another Swamp Talk covering those issues. And so, yeah, that should be pretty fun. And then we get into volume 2, which is even better.
I am excited. I can't wait.
Well, with that, we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.